Divorce decisions are tough, but ignoring your HOA could cost you even more. I'm Tisha Mitchell, your divorce real estate strategist. Today, I'm joined by Community Association Manager Jarrett Mitchell, and we're breaking down how HOA fees, special assessments, and board politics can quietly wreck your financial plans. Jarrett Mitchell is a community association manager, an accomplished real estate broker and senior manager with extensive experience overseeing large-scale real estate and asset management operations. As an associate broker at POS Solutions, he manages over 7,500 units across 48 communities and more than 10 million in assets annually, leaving teams that consistently approve community standards, compliance, and professional standards, financial performance and professional standards. So here's one thing, right? We often overlook the power that an HOA, and let me break this down, a homeowners association. We often don't even think about the power and control a homeowners association has over our property. And if you don't understand that, it can be a major factor in divorce. So, Jarrett Mitchell, let's get into what a homeowners association is, what it means, what the power that it wields, and the problems that you see when people are transferring ownership of properties. So let's get started.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, let's start with the defining what these are because I think this is very important. First and foremost, it is important to understand that there are a couple of different types of associations, and the most commonly referred to one is a homeowners association, which is fine. But there's also condo associations if you live in a condo, and there are what's called property owner associations, which are similar to HOAs but slightly different in terms of the responsibilities and the authorities. When you are buying into a community that has these associations in place, it is very important that you know what their regulations and what their covenants, their conditions and restrictions are. Um, and I can go into any of this that you'd like me to go into, but just first and foremost, understand that if you are buying a house, whether or not it's in an HOA is a matter of public record. So anybody who is buying into an HOA, I know sometimes a thing that I see oftentimes in my space is that people didn't know about the HOA, they didn't know about the covenants and so on and so forth. Uh, that information is available for public record. So if you go to your county property tax site or your county property record site, you should be able to find the listing and the covenants and bylaws of any association that your property is listed to be a part of. And that way you can take an opportunity to read prior to signing on that dotted line and being a part of that. So you know what you're
Okay,
getting into.
pause. As a real estate professional, as a real estate agent, it is hard for me to believe that people actually buy houses in a homeowners association that they're not aware of. So, just to give some context as to what can happen, if you're working with a real estate professional, they should advise you that the property is located within a homeowners association if the property is standing, and be able to get a copy of the homeowner association bylaws, covenants, and restrictions from the seller prior to selling. You should be able to read those restrictions prior to signing on the dotted line because those restrictions go with the house and you have to abide by them. So the number one question I would encourage you to ask your real estate agent if you're working with a real estate professional is this home in a homeowners association? What does that mean? And how do I get a copy of the documents of which I will be responsible for? Because here's a couple things that we're not aware of is that oftentimes when you close on a property, it is not until after you close that the HOA is notified that you've purchased the property. It's
Mhm.
not until you're already in the property that the HOA will send you documents on what those restrictions are. But there's a way to get them ahead of time, and I encourage you to do so. It's a simple question you ask your real estate agent, and it'll be part of your closing documents as well. Isn't it that you're signing, understanding that you know that this property is in an HOA? However, in closings, there's so much paperwork that you are signing that you have no idea. You leave away with a big package of information and you have no clue what that is because you're packing, you're moving, you've dealt with the loan if you have one, you found this house. There's a lot of things going on. Is that correct?
Absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
what is your process as a community association manager for notifying homeowners that they are part of a homeowners association?
Well, in terms of prospective buyers, you already alluded to it. We don't oftentimes know who those people are until we're actually receiving a closing letter with an intent to sell. And at that point, we encourage them to request a closing package, which does include it. But up to that point, it's one of those buyer beware where the information is accessible and should be found during the due diligence period. I do hear oftentimes after they've gotten through the closing process and they've been in their house for a year or 2 years and they've got this HOA tax bill. I'm not supposed to be a part of the HOA. It's like, well, where did that information come from? Who told you that? Because this information is listed on your deed. Um, it's important as a prospective homeowner that we understand that things that are considered to be public knowledge, that's what they call public notice, constructive notice, that falls into the buyer beware aspect of your due diligence. If it's publicly information, which is why I started with that, then the real estate professional or any professionals who's going through this technically have no duty to provide this information to you because it's publicly available for you to find. So,
Wait a minute, pause. So
mhm,
you're saying that it is the buyer's responsibility to know whether or not their house is part of an HOA. Is that correct?
it is a buyer's responsibility to find out. It
Ah,
is no more the real estate professional's responsibility to tell them that than it is to tell them what school district their house is a part of. That
okay.
is a part of the homeowner's responsibility.
Awesome. Good to know. Okay. So let's start with the money, right? So what are the financial and fee related issues that people need to be aware of, especially if they're going through a divorce? Now, we've talked about the purchase side of it and knowing about it going into it, but I also want to talk about what can a homeowners what powers does a homeowners association have over someone's home?
All right. So the broad brush answer that you're going to hear me say a lot is it depends. And I'm going to give you some examples because every association is different with some commonalities, but the specifics of your particular association may be a bit different. So first and foremost, it is important if you are the person who does not typically deal with the finances of the house, know that the HOA fees are not included in the mortgage payment anywhere, ever, period. They are separate and they are paid directly by the homeowner. Now, the reason why this is important is because oftentimes when an owner gets delinquent, and it ends up being a scenario where we're having a conversation with the spouse or whomever the case may be. Oh, that's supposed to be paid as a part of my mortgage payment. It's not. This is a direct fee to you as the owner. Now, uh, it is important also to note that when and if these fees are not paid, what rights the association has is very clearly laid out in the covenants for you to be able to know ahead of time. It will tell you if the association has the right to impose late fees. It will tell you if the association has the right to impose interest. It will tell you if the association has the right to impose liens and or up to and including potentially foreclosure. There are some circumstances where some homeowners have the right to foreclose on your house for a very small amount.
Wait a
Now,
minute, wait a minute. You're telling me that the homeowners association can foreclose on my house if I don't pay the homeowners association fees?
in some cases, yes. In many cases, yes. But again, this isn't information that should come as a surprise to an owner in an HOA because again, this information is available to you in your covenants and it tells you that. The association cannot impose any authorities that are not laid out within their covenants. That's important because if you are ever confused, and I'm not going to sit here and pretend that there are not circumstances where HOA boards may overextend their authorities or they may abuse their authorities, but it's important to know an informed homeowner is a dangerous homeowner. If you know what the association and the board can and cannot do, it gives you the ammunition that you need to be able to know what you should do and when you should fight back and how you should fight back. If the covenants specify that the association has the ability to foreclose, that association has the ability to foreclose, and it can be for a very small amount. It can be a year's worth of assessments. It can be a month's worth of assessments if you're in a monthly association. They still have to get a judgment for it. They still got to go through court and all of those different things. But you know, I'm on Reddit oftentimes, and I'm in these HOA spaces trying to give a little bit of information wherever I can. But you know, we're seeing circumstances where military spouses are getting foreclosed on for $3,200 on a $400,000 house, and the default thing is, oh, HOAs are evil. Well, I understand the sentiment, but it is also important to note that knowing what's in your covenants and reading your covenants and being familiar with those covenants is very important. If there's something in your covenants that you don't understand, then your board and your HOA manager, if you have one, are supposed to help to explain it to you. And if not, I strongly recommend hiring an HOA specific attorney to help you understand these covenants as well if there are things that you have specific questions about.
So I want to pause and ask some general questions, right?
Sure.
What is the purpose of an HOA, and what exactly do you do? Or what exactly does an HOA do?
Great question. So from an official capacity, HOAs are there to create an additional layer of management, maintenance, and authorities that acts as an intercessor between the homeowner and local government. From a philosophical perspective, oftentimes people forget that cities have expanded quite a bit. There's a lot of growth and there's a lot of building and there's a lot of development that goes into building neighborhoods. And for a long time, these neighborhoods, the expansion of utilities, the expansion of roads, all of these different things, the bill was foot by the city or the county to expand these things. These really eat into city and county budgets. So to offset those costs, many areas have started to require homeowners associations as a part of the agreement to allow a developer to build. As this developer is building, you are responsible for expanding these utilities, you are responsible for expanding these streets. And in addition to that, we want you to create this level of miniature government that creates oversight and maintenance responsibility and authority so that we don't have to do everything, right? And the philosophy behind that, I think, and obviously I can't prove this, but I believe the philosophy behind that was to improve the conditions of communities overall by having another layer of oversight that cities may not necessarily be able to take on. And we do know that homes in HOAs tend to sell more than homes that are not in HOA. They sell for higher prices, but again, the purpose is just to take some of this burden off of the city and the county. They are spread thin, and by creating these additional entities, they centralize the authorities and the responsibilities to the entities as opposed to all of these different owners that may be within the entity.
So the way I understand this is maybe you are a quasi code enforcement, right? But then also you take care of certain things, the amenities, pools, common areas, making sure that the community looks nice. What other things do you handle that we typically wouldn't think about?
Sure. So a lot of, particularly for communities that don't have amenities, they don't have pools, they don't have clubhouses. That's typically the question that comes up. Where does my money go? There's a lot that actually goes into managing an HOA. So there's insurances that have to be paid. You mentioned common areas. Whether the common areas are big or small, they still have to be maintained. There are retention ponds which handle stormwater systems and whatnot that have to be maintained on a pretty regular basis that oftentimes homeowners may never ever see. It may be they may be back someplace that you never go and you may never recognize it as there. Property taxes have to be paid on common area properties. Financial management. So when owners are actually paying their assessments, paying the vendors, all of these different pieces that go into actually managing. If you think about how you have to manage your household, right? You've got money that comes in that you get paid from whatever it is that you do professionally, and you've got all these different things that you have to pay as an owner. You got to pay your insurance, you got to pay your property tax, you got to pay your electric bill, you got to pay your water bill, you got to pay for your home maintenance, you got to pay for all of these different things. HOAs have those very same things. Condos have even more. So funds have to come into a centralized place and they have to be distributed to handle all of these invisible expenses that an association may have. This can include management. But again, there has to be somebody who's paying the bills. And all of these things, for example, such as insurance, such as taxes, they are required. These things are not optional. If we have common area spaces and they are not properly maintained, meaning like the grass isn't cut, the trees aren't cut back, things of that nature that again you may never see as an owner. If those things aren't done by the association, the county code enforcement is coming and dealing with those things as well. So those are the things that are going to get managed. I think oftentimes when we talk about HOAs, people think about the pool and they think about the clubhouse and or the playgrounds or any amenities that they may have, but it oftentimes gets forgotten that there are all these other expenses that just are required for the entity itself just to run, and that's a lot of where the money goes.
Love it. Love it. So what is your governing authority? Is it the covenants? Is it the is the covenants? Because what we need to understand with a homeowners association is that it's a deed restriction, which means that
Absolutely.
when you purchase a house, you're agreeing to abide by these rules, right? So what are the most common, besides people saying, I didn't know I was part of an HOA, right? What are your biggest issues in dealing with homeowners associations?
Yeah, so to answer the first question, your governing authorities are granted by your covenants, also known as CCRs, and your bylaws. Your covenants tell you what authorities the association has, what rights the association has, what authorities or what rights and responsibilities you as an owner has, what rules you may follow. The bylaws tell how the association is to be governed. So this is when you have meetings. This is when you need to give meeting notice. This is what the board will consist of. This is how they're elected. This is the roles that they serve. Both of these documents are very important. The covenants are going to be the ones you deal with the most often, though. The things that we tend to deal with are usually issues of ignorance. So, you want to make an addition to your house. You want to paint. You want to add a deck. You want to change a garage door. There are rules and regulations in those covenants that lay out what that's supposed to look like. How do you get the authorities to do so? In some cases, it will tell you what they have to look like. So there are some circumstances, for example, that may tell you that you can't change out your front door, or you can't put this color shingle on your roof, or you can't paint your trim this particular color. Some of that information is laid out on your covenants ahead of time. Um, but again, with the idea being that this is my house and I can do what I want, oftentimes people will do things on their property, not recognizing that they didn't have the right to do so based on what the covenants stated. Um, I oftentimes see things such as, we're dealing with maintenance issues. We're dealing with people who, perhaps they just haven't been able to keep their grass cut, or they they may be storing things on their property that they're not able to store. They might have an above ground pool that they put out for the kids in the summertime, and that's not allowed, or a trampoline that's not allowed, or even things pertaining to pets. You know, a lot of us grew up in environments where we could just let our pet run outside the back door to go use the bathroom and come on back. That's not necessarily allowed. And it's really about how do you live within this community that has other neighbors that are going to be in close proximity to you, and how do these things affect uh, your position within this community?
So this is interesting, right? So I think a lot of people don't really understand the legal and liability risks, right? So when we're talking about we're talking about what happens when you go to buy the house and what happens while you're living in the community. But a lot of things come up when people are going to sell their house. So what are some of
Absolutely.
the hidden things that maybe someone who is divorcing and deciding whether or not they're going to keep the house or sell it, what are some things that would prevent the sale, and what are some common things that owners are not aware of until they're getting ready to close?
Yeah, absolutely. Common things are outstanding liens and violations, and those are two big things that can prevent or hold up a sale. So um, it's important to recognize that if there's any amount that's owed to the association, that amount stays with the property. Okay. Um, Oftentimes when we're seeing properties that are trying to transact, there may be a significant outstanding balance owed to the association. And this could be a myriad of things. This could be violation fines. This could be legal fees. These could be outstanding assessments. These could be late fees and interest. And all of these things are categorized separately, but they are still considered to be a lien against the property. If you're trying to sell the property and there is this outstanding balance that's owed to the association, that doesn't wipe away. That has to be cleared as a part of the transaction. And what I see oftentimes is that the owner or the previous owner may owe so much to the association that it doesn't leave any equity for a transaction to even clear, right?
Pause, pause, pause. This is important, especially in a divorce situation, because if liens for unpaid HOA fees have not been paid, and whomever is deciding to keep or to sell the property is not aware of that, especially as someone who has been awarded the property. We think about in divorce, there's called a marital balance sheet, and that is where, your assets and your liabilities are divided. But if the seller, the home seller, or the person or the buyer or the whatever, if they are not aware that those fees exist, then that could be something that one person is responsible for when they shouldn't necessarily be that, right? So how would someone know that there are outstanding fees or assessments or whatever to take this into account?
Great question. This requires you being involved in asking the question. Spouses have the same rights in an association as the principal owner. They are considered to be as one unit. So if one spouse's name is on the deed and only that spouse's name is listed on the deed, for example, that's the case in my house. My name is listed on the deed. My wife is not, but my wife has the same rights to visibility and transparency from the homeowners association as I do. She can call, identify herself as my spouse, and be able to get the information pertaining to the property from the homeowners association. They must share that information with her, right? So very first thing that we need to do is, as we're attempting to figure out what we're doing with the house, be it put it on the market to sell, if we're transferring ownership from one spouse to the other spouse, the first thing that needs to happen is get a ledger from the homeowners association to what the balance on your home is. They must provide that information to you. An account, for example, has been shifted over to the attorneys for collections. Maybe you may not be aware of this information and you're attempting to take it on. The attorneys must share that information with you as well. You can request to find out what the status of any liens or any outstanding balances on your property are for that property. Ask that question, find out what that is, because that will absolutely help you determine how you move forward. Um, Go ahead.
Go ahead, now finish.
Um, an account that is with the attorneys is oftentimes going through the court system. And as it's going through the court system, those are going to incur additional fees, and that can increase the balance really, really quickly. So if you find out, for example, that an account has a lien that's been transferred over to the attorney, you want to try to find out what that is as quickly as possible, because you want to demonstrate, if you intend on taking that property over, that you are operating in good faith with an attempt to try to resolve this. And oftentimes, that's a very simple conversation that you can have with the attorneys. Hey, I'm taking on this property. It's being deeded over to me. We're going through a divorce. I just realized that there was a balance on the account. I'm trying to make it whole. Can we work something out? And oftentimes, they will work with you to work something out.
So I know you're not an attorney. As a real estate agent, though, one of the things that I ask all of my sellers to do is to reach out to the homeowners association to get certain questions asked, right? And oftentimes, if I've seen, this is my own personal experience, I'm not saying that this is across the board. I've seen a lot with homeowners where the HOA will try to work with them on outstanding balances. However, once you contact the HOA and you say, I'm getting ready to sell my house, the HOA becomes aware that there's probably some equity in there and they want their part. So if you are planning to sell the house, it's important for you to work with the HOA prior to announcing to them that it's your intent to sell. So oftentimes these things have gone on, and I think a lot of times homeowners don't really realize that they can contact you and say, Can we work out a payment plan? Can we work on, can you can we work out a settlement? Like, what are the options when people have crazy outstanding HOAs dues that are assessed?
Yeah, that's a great question, and the answer is it depends on what the balance is comprised of. So, for example, and I can't speak for other management companies. I can speak for us, and I know oftentimes what we do may be above and beyond what other management companies do. But if the balance is comprised of primarily HOA assessments, and that is your fee to the HOA at whatever frequency that may be, annual, semi-annual, monthly, quarterly, whatever that may be, those balances oftentimes are what they are. Late fees may be able to be waived or wiped or reduced per the board's discretion. If there are violation fines, for example, those have a lot more leeway, especially once the violation has been corrected. So let's just say, for example, you've got a violation because you've got a shutter that's falling off the front of your house, and you didn't know, but once you found out, you got it corrected and you got it rectified. When you're reaching out to the association, you want to demonstrate to them that you are operating in good faith. Hey, I just realized that I got this violation for the shutter falling off. I've gone ahead and fixed it because I wasn't aware of it. I didn't even know about the notice. I'm asking, can we work something out? Can we get a break? And a lot of times boards who are reasonable, they will tend to work with you. They may not wipe it all, but they may wipe some. But again, the important thing is that you reach out and you demonstrate that you are trying to operate in good faith. Hey, I just became aware of this, particularly for divorcees, because that's absolutely a very relevant and strong point of compassion that you can utilize. Hey, I'm going through a divorce. I'm trying to get all of these things together for the divorce. I just found out about this because I didn't see it before. Now that I'm aware, I'm trying to get all the affairs in order. I've got this violation corrected, or I'm trying to get this account balance caught up. Can we work out a payment plan? Can we do this? Can we do that? You are going to get a lot more leeway if you go into it as a request as opposed to a demand, because that's a mistake that I see oftentimes owners make, is that you will wipe well, no, if they are legitimately on your account per the authorities given in the covenants, they don't have to. But if you go into it in good faith and you go into it as a request, and you're demonstrating that you are trying to get the association whole as well as get your account whole, they will be much more apt to work with you if you have that interactive conversation. I think that's the best advice they can give you.
I think that's great. Let's talk about this next thing, special assessments. So,
Mm,
talk about what special assessments are. What sort of things do people have special assessments for, and how? Because sometimes there's notice about a special assessment that might not be levied yet. So, let's talk about that, so that is also taken into consideration as maybe a fee or something happening if someone's deciding that they're going to dispose of the property or even keep it. That
mhm.
talk about ways that is taken into account for court as well.
Oh, absolutely. So, a special assessment is a fee that the association charges above and beyond regular assessments for a particular purpose. Um, I can actually illustrate this best by a story. When I was early in my real estate career, I had worked with a client who was looking to buy a condo near Emory College. I'll never forget this because it was one of the first handful of transactions that I'd worked on. And they were actually really excited because we had found one. They thought it was a good price. They wanted to buy two condos right next to each other to create one big condo. I tried to advise them against that, but ultimately, what the best advice that I'd given them was, we need to get a copy of the association financials to see where they stand. And in pulling the financials for that association, one thing that we found was that that association had just passed a $5,000 special assessment per unit. The reason they had to pull a special assessment was because they needed to get their rooftop air conditioning unit replaced, and they did not have enough money in reserves to do so. So they called for a special assessment to make up the money to do it. Special assessments are not optional, just like regular assessments are not optional. So anyone who owns a unit within that association is on the hook for that $5,000. Now, in my client's particular case, That was what we needed for them to know that this is not the move, because you don't want to have to buy a unit and then be out $10,000 right off the bat. But oftentimes, when you see a special assessment like that come across, you will see units come up for sale for a reduced price because they're trying to get out of it quickly. Special assessments are oftentimes a sign of either an unhealthy or an overextended association. Not always, but often. And the thing about a special assessment is that it usually indicates there's some form of maintenance or something that has been deferred that might cause issues down the line, or they've identified that this is an issue and it must happen immediately. It's difficult uh, to be in a scenario where you've got to come up with a few extra $1,000. Most of the times it's a few extra hundred, but oftentimes, this isn't something that you planned on. And again, you have a limited amount of time that you have to pay it, and it's collectible just like regular assessments are collectible. And again, because you are part of this association and this assessment is passed, you are on the hook for it whether you've got the money or not. So they are typically required to pass and to give notice to the members of the association that this assessment is being proposed. This is the amount that we're proposing. This is what we're proposing to use it for. This is when we expect to be able to have to collect it. And there are some cases where the board has unilateral authority to pass one. They don't have to give notice to the association ahead of time at all. Only that this is what we're passing and when it's due.
Wait a minute,
Most cases.
wait a minute, pause. Are you
Mhm.
trying to tell me that the homeowners don't necessarily have to vote as to whether or not they're willing to take on that assessment?
Not in all cases. In many cases, there are, again, unilateral authority. The association board can choose to pass a special assessment. Now a lot of times that's capped to a particular amount. So, it may be $250, $500, whatever the case may be. They have to give you notice that they're doing it, but they don't have to get a vote. You don't have to vote in favor or against it. They can do it on their own accord. More often than not, most of the time, yes, they have to give notice to the association and collect a vote in favor of it in order for it to go in place. But again, not always. This is why reading your covenants is so important. Because if your covenants has the authority of the board to pass a unilateral assessment, there is effectively not anything you can do about it.
Wow. There's another story, since we're talking about stories about HOAs, right? One of the things that can also impact your sale or purchase of a property is how many delinquencies there are in a particular association. Can you speak a little bit about what that means, the delinquencies, and for someone who is selling to a person who is trying to finance a property, how let's talk about how that fits in.
Yeah, yeah. We see that with condos more than anything, because condos tend to be connected. They tend to have some shared traits. But yeah, if a delinquency rate, and again, this is a part of being able to pull your financials of the association as a part of due diligence. Now, mind you, let me say this quick caveat. When we're talking about getting this information pertaining to an association you're looking to buy in, oftentimes the management company is going to give you pushback because you are not a member of the association. But you should be able to get this information from the seller, because the seller, as a member of the association, has rights to all of this information. Okay, so just we'll put a pin in that. But yes, when we're talking about condo units tend to have they are more directly affected by delinquencies than single family units. The
Why?
reason for that is because condo units tend to have shared utilities, shared amenities. So shared exteriors, shared water lines, shared roofs, whatever the case may be. And those delinquencies directly affect the ability of those things to get maintained on a timely basis. So oftentimes lenders, if they see a delinquency ratio beyond a certain point, and it's going to be different for every lender, they will choose not to invest or to approve in that particular association because it's too risky. Um, FHA has his own guidelines on that, and I can't recall off the top of my head what that guideline is. But yes, delinquencies can also affect if you are an owner trying to use an FHA loan for a condo. That can absolutely impact your ability to get financed on that. Doesn't affect you if you're buying cash. If you happen to be in a position where you're fortunate enough to be able to buy a unit cash, you can go in there and do whatever you want. But if you're trying to get a particular type of loan, the delinquency ratio of the association can absolutely impact that. And in some cases, depending on the price of the unit, depending on the area of the unit, depending on the type of loan that you can get, a delinquency ratio from upwards of 20% can be high enough to trigger a finance loan not to go through.
So we can go in the weeds with this, and I want to really keep this high level. The bottom line is this: the health of the homeowners association will have an impact both on who's purchasing the property and whether or not you can sell it. So it's extremely important for you to understand one, is the property a part of a homeowners association? Two, are you personally, or is your household personally up to date or delinquent? Three, what is the delinquency rate of the other people around you? And those things will have an impact on your property value. And if you're going into this situation with a comparable market analysis from a real estate agent or an appraisal, those folks will not know whether or not these things are outstanding. That is up to the buyer and the seller to understand that themselves. So I think a lot of times homeowners think that the professionals are supposed to help them, but that's not information that a real estate agent will have access to. That's not information that an appraiser will have access to. You generally sometimes will find that out in the middle of a transaction when it implodes. So if you're
Mhm.
going into a court with an appraiser or comparative market analysis, and that is the value you're using for your marital balance sheet. However, the property has got to be reduced because of this outstanding assessments or things that are going on. That is going to have an impact on whomever, whether they are choosing to stay in the house, whether they're choosing to sell the house. And those are not factors that the court will take into consideration, but it could run into tens of thousands of dollars if you have to reduce the price of the house to get it sold, or you have a limited number of buyers because you can't get it financed. So that's the point in all of this.
Absolutely. And I think the most important thing as a person on the other side of the divorce is to understand that this information, while it may seem like it's overwhelming and it comes out of nowhere, this information is not information that's hidden per se, right? The HOA has a right to provide all of its membership an accounting of the financials, right? And that includes an overview of what's in the association's account, what is the delinquency rate, uh, where do we currently stand in terms of our actual amounts that we spent versus our budget. Get a hold of those pieces of information because those details will absolutely help you to determine how you move forward.
Awesome. All right. We've covered a lot. Any final tips or tricks or things that we need to be aware of when it comes to a homeowners association that we haven't covered so far?
Yeah, I think it's important to know that one, the HOA is not your enemy, but it is important that you become an informed homeowner. It's okay for you to ask these questions, right? Because this is stuff that if you're not dealing with it on a regular basis, you may not know about. Go to the meetings, ask the questions, talk to the board, talk to the managers. Um, all of these things are absolutely going to help you determine what, if any, actions you need to take to try to make some adjustments as you're going through your divorce proceedings. You don't want to come in there. You don't want to come in there with a piece of information that is publicly available and be missing something or leaving money on the table because you were unaware.
I love it. Well, Jarrett Mitchell, thank you so much for having a conversation with the Bose Global Living Group. And my name is Tisha, your real estate and divorce strategist. Talk to you soon, my friends.
Thank you.